Okay. So I'm gonna say this off straight off the bat. I have been a big follower of MatPat, Game Theorist. And this is I watched probably 50 seconds of this, and I'm already really confused. And I've done FNAF since the first time it came out. I've done theories on it, everything. Some of them are actually correct. I don't know where he's taking this, and I'm gonna react to it live right now. I'm actually gonna do this. Okay, and it's really confusing me right now, to the point I'm even gonna hold my microphone like this because I need this to be close. Also, because it's very late and I don't want to wake up my dad. But I'm not gonna say he's wrong or anything like that until after. I will have parts where I'll be pausing it to just have a little reaction or something like that. But let's get started.
What if I told you that everything we thought we knew about FNAF was a lie? That Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy were never possessed? That the bite of 87 never happened? Heck, that the bite of 83 never happened? What if I told you that William Afton didn't die because some spirits harassed him in a back room, but because he got careless and wet? What if I told you that Gold...
Actually, out of all these, I honestly believe the purple one, without him giving any explanation. That one, the purple guy one, that one actually makes sense to me. Because we kind of said that once in a while, that, oh, purple guy just got careless instead of him getting put in there because of it. Because we hear the water, we hear all of that. We know it's the water that sets off the spring locks. But we don't realize if it was because of that, well, if it was because he just was getting into the suit, or it was because he was getting chased by spirits. We didn't really know that. Anyways, continuing.
and Freddy never existed. You would all think that I was crazy, right? That after 60 episodes covering this series that I'd finally lost it, or gotten so desperate that I needed you to throw it all away and start again for content. But I assure you, I'm still here. Totally sane, or yes, as sane as I've ever been, and totally suspecting that some, maybe even all of the statements that I just made are 100% true. So open your ears and listen to what I have to say, because once I'm done, none of us will look at this franchise.
Before I even go on about this, I have a feeling, because I had a theory that Glitch Trap has actually existed this whole time. Reason for it's me and all that, and for the glitchy, like, rabbit and Freddy stuff that goes on in the background, like FNAF 2 with oh my god, Shadow Bonnie. I'm gonna just call him that, and then also Shadow Freddy, because if you stared at him, well, I don't think Shadow Bonnie. If you stare at him, it broke your game. But if you stared at Shadow Freddy, it completely crashed your game. Golden Freddy completely crashed your game. I don't know if there's any FNAF 3 ones. FNAF 4 was Nightmare, which is like one of the shadow animatronics. Trying to think of, I don't think any others do the crash thing. You have to remind me of that. I'm actually not sure about that one. But let's continue it. And I'm guessing either it's the Springtrap thing, not Springtrap, Glitch Trap thing, where he was originally taking over William's body, like he does with Vanny. And I'm thinking that's what's going on, just by the glitches here as well. But that was one of my big theories. But I just never put it into a full video. But anyways, let's continue.
Franchise the same way again. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, where... Am I the only one that hears that weird humming sound? I think it's coming from the subscribe button. Can you help me smash it? Oh, thank goodness, that was driving me insane. Huh, what's this small disc that fell out? Yep, probably not important. Today is a big day as far as FNAF theory goes. Usually I'm here picking apart details from the newest book, or trying to solve one very specific part of the franchise's history, or reminding you that robot kids do in fact exist and Gregory is one of them. But this episode has a wider scope. It's bigger. It touches literally everything released in the franchise thus far. I don't know if I agree with today's theory or not. I don't even know if I like today's theory or not. Scratch that. that, I do know, kinda hate it, and what it means for the franchise. But regardless of whether you agree or disagree, love it or hate it, I am asking you to keep an open mind about it, because this one feels important. And the implications of it, if true, would certainly result in the biggest shakeup for the series since.
Oh yeah, this would make it either so much more easier or so much more complicated than it could ever be.
It's the conclusion of FNAF 6. Today, I'm asking you to take everything that you thought you knew about FNAF 1, 2, 3, and 4. Possessed animatronics, the crying child, the missing children's incident,
So, what I'm guessing from here, he's trying to figure out. He's actually going to the original. I call it the end of the beginning chapters or beginning games, because not chapter 4. FNAF 4 had the final chapter as its whole thing, which I always thought was the beginning of the story. That was, then it went to a different chapter. That's what I always thought it was. But I think that's where he's going with this. I think he's going to just focus on this. I'm hoping he's going through those 4 games, because I think I know what he's going with.
Entire existence of Golden Freddy, take all of that and burn it to the ground. Maybe not burn it, we've seen that that tends not to work. Take it all and put it through a paper shredder or something, will ya? Because none of it matters. None of it. It's all wrong. Or maybe it isn't. But before I explain why, I have to tell you that brand new holiday theory wear is available. I am the hugest fan of the merch that we're turquoise. Partnered with Creator, a special, well-favored color I want, Brent turquoise. And that color, more ready. We've got the next installment of it. It's into creative series. No, we just very confident there's even variable space set. Television constructed, which that's
why is there such
burn
a
core.
goddamn
Much like Doritos
long one?
and Mountain Dew. Check out our great eternity. We will ease
Jesus
shirt hood anywhere.
Christ,
Check
there's
too.
so many.
Before the release is my 5 Nights
Okay,
retcon
here we
it
go.
all out of existence. Speaking of retconning, back in 2019, we got the release of 5 Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted, otherwise known as FNAF VR. A game that, to this day, ranks as my 3rd favorite from the franchise. On one hand, it was looking forward to the next phase of the series by introducing a new villain, Glitch Trap. But it also had its feet firmly planted in the past, a culmination of everything that had come before in a very literal way, by collecting the first 3 games and turning them into VR experiences. It really felt like an inflection point for the series, a transition from the old story of a serial killer in a haunted pizzeria to the new stories it had yet to tell about the killer living on through technology. But buried in the game were some lines that made everyone stop and go, huh? Right at the top, we got this moment.
We know that Fazbear Entertainment has developed something of a bad reputation, and while it's true that some stories associated with our name were loosely based on actual events, the majority of them were total fabrications from the mind of a complete lunatic. Lawsuits pending.
With the lunatic shown on screen being, of course, a picture of Scott Cawthon himself. It felt like good meme fodder, a funny meta joke that also poked fun at Fazbear Entertainment papering over their bloody history. But then the game chose to double down. In one of the game's hidden lore tapes, we learned more about this lunatic spreading lies about the Fazbear restaurants.
They lied to all of us. They told us that the whole point of this VR game was to undo the bad PR done by a rogue indie game developer. But that's not true at all. Fazbear Entertainment hired the game developer. Those indie games were designed to conceal and make light of what happened. It's an elaborate cover-up.
It was weird. It seemed like FNAF VR was actively throwing into question everything we thought we knew about the franchise's lore. At the time, I went on the record to say this. If FNAF VR's tapes are to be believed, pretty much everything we know could all be thrown out as complete fabrications. The long story short here is that FNAF VR, in making Scott part of the Fazbear cover-up, is the franchise's way of rebooting the story. It's explicitly telling us that everything we've known up to this point is wrong. It's a distraction. And that's largely where the community left it. It was a bit of a weird call for the series to disregard.
Just to mention, that is only the first 4 games, because when it hit the 5th, you could tell by the way it's made, it completely shifts on what it's supposed to be. Like moving into different rooms, having full voice lines from other characters except for a phone. And you can tell that it starts moving into this bigger company of games. And then, but if you go back to the first 4 games, it's always been the same premise there. There's nothing new. It's almost exactly the same each time. FNAF Sister Location was the first to actually add something completely new to the story. Because how Scott did stuff. I know I misspelled theory. Thank you very much. Because I don't know spelling. I'm kidding. But let's not worry about the misspelling. It was theory. I think that this is going to go into. Well, sorry, I got distracted for a second. Well, let's just continue then.
Everything that had come before, but honestly, it would have been fine. Here's the old original story arc with the first 6 games, and here's the new one moving forward. 2 separate story arcs told within the same universe. Fine. Until Security Breach came out. Suddenly, Springtrap was a key player again, and we were exploring the burned remains of the FNAF 6 location. And the idea of the first 6 games being the crazed ramblings of a hired lunatic were largely forgotten as we were.
Again, I still think that it was the only first 4 games. And then a little bit of sister location, because you can tell that there was way less mini games in there. Pizzeria Simulator might also count as that because it's trying to cover up what's going on there, but I'm not really sure about Pizzeria Simulator.
Were thrust yet again back into the story of the Aftons. Business as usual, only this time there was Music Man. So that was pretty much the status quo for the past year. But then, in late September, the unthinkable happened. We got another book. I know, I said the B word. I'm sorry, but stick with me, this one's different. You see, this one delivers on the hope that we've had for the books from the very beginning, that they would take small moments from the games and expand upon them to bring more clarity. Care to guess what moment from the games they chose to expand upon? The story of a rogue indie developer hired by Fazbear Entertainment to create a series of games covering up the company's shady past. And if there was any lingering doubt as to how this story fit into the games, the title was none other than Help Wanted. I'm about to summarize what exactly happens in the story, but the TLDR of it is exactly what we predicted back in 2019, that everything you thought you knew about the franchise is dead, just not exactly in the way that we thought, and it suddenly changes everything about how we should be approaching this franchise moving forward. In the story, we follow a character named Steve, an indie game developer stuck in a dead-end job while working on a quote, fetch quest-based game featuring cartoony chipmunks. Now, what could that be a reference to, Scott? Just like we hear about in FNAF VR, Steve is contacted by Fazbear Entertainment to create a series of games in order to help rebrand the company. At first, he turns down the offer. Not the company to take no for an answer, Fazbear then sets up an elaborate plot where they catfish Steve into a date with the woman of his dreams. During the date, he passes out, only to wake up and find that suddenly he's married to the woman and suffering from severe memory loss. This happens a few more times, waking up to discover that he now has children, or that the house he lives in is being foreclosed. Suddenly, in desperate need of money, he contacts Fazbear Entertainment and starts making games for him. 4 games, to be specific. All the while, a constant ringing is happening in his ear.
Told you that there was 4 games. I even had to read the book. I already knew that there would be 4 games because you could tell just by the final chapter type thing.
Bit by bit, he becomes more sleep-deprived and paranoid, which then feeds into his games. At night, he's haunted by night terrors, horrific monsters that keep popping out of the walls, which only pushes him to work harder. And throughout it all, the ringing continues to build, rotting his brain. Eventually, Steve discovers what's going on. The high-pitched sound that he keeps hearing has been creating illusions used to gaslight him. His house, just a series of blank rooms. The night terrors, amusement park jump scares coming out of the walls. His beautiful family, robots with plastic faces and wheels. Their physical description actually sounds a lot like the staff bots. Steve is then given a choice of going back to the miserable real world or returning to the happiness that he felt inside the illusion. He chooses the illusion, giving his robot wife a hug, who then stabs him to death. Oh, also there's a DJ on the radio called DJ Dan, the Music Man. It's not important to the lore, it's just for the memes. It is a super sad story. It's also in no way a tale from the Pizzaplex, considering the place isn't mentioned once. But more than anything else, it's a story that confirms some.
Well, if you think about it, Help Wanted, it was made by the same people that made Security Breach. So that VR game was made by the same producers. I'm not talking about real life. I'm talking about in the games. The producers of Fazbear Entertainment was the same people. It was the same like VR team and the same and it was going to real life technically. So that's what would bring those two together.
some of our greatest fears about the franchise. First and foremost, illusion discs are now officially a thing in the games. If you don't know what illusion discs are, then good for you. You clearly avoided reading the novels. I, however, not so lucky. Basically,
Or
these
you
things
just
use high-pitched
watched
noises to
anything.
trick the human mind into creating intensely real illusions of things that aren't really there. A robot appears exactly like a human. A pizzeria is more decorated than it actually is. Characters turn practically invisible on camera. These are all ways that they've been used in the books, but up until this point, we've never had a reason to believe that they were in the game universe. The only time that I've suspected that they might be a thing in the games is this scene from Sister Location, when we remove a random flashing disc from Funtime Freddy's chest. It was just speculation at the time, but now, going back, listen to that scene.
The chest cavity should now be open. Remove the power module from the chest cavity. Great work.
You hear it? The buzzing? That humming is only present in scenes where we're directly interacting with an animatronic in close proximity. Just saying, there might have been more evidence to suggest that these things were actually in the games earlier than we thought, but hindsight's 2020. With this new story, we know it's valid technology, and that has huge implications for things that we see throughout Security Breach, like when we hear high-pitched ringing and have distorted vision anytime Vanny runs past us. Why Glamrock Freddy apparently can't see Vanny until he gets Roxy's eyes. It's all much more likely now because
And honestly, it could explain why Gregory has those visions of the monitor type thing. It could just be what Vanny uses to distort people.
she's using illusion discs. It may also play into the mystery of who Patient 46 is. In Retro CD number 15, we hear this clip.
I have this still shot the techs pulled from the security footage that recorded you in the Pizzaplex. That's you, isn't it? I know this image is distorted, but I think it looks like you. You're talking to someone. Or something. They almost look like rabbit ears.
One of the consistent features of the illusion discs is that they distort or blur any images that appear on camera. We see this all throughout the fourth closet, so the fact that the still image and the distortion are directly being called out here in the CDs indicate that Patient 46 may also be hiding behind an illusion disc. Who knows, if my guess was right and Gregory is meant to be Patient 46, that could be why he's appearing all blurry here in the camera shots from the DLC poster. Admittedly, that opens up its own can of worms and contradictions that would merit their own discussion. Like, why would he be clearing all these other pictures? I'm just tossing it out as something for us to chew on. Much more importantly, though, the Help Wanted story confirms that FNAF 1, 2, 3, and 4 are canonically video games within Freddy's fictional universe. They were created by a hired gun. A hired gun who, in the story, is confirmed to not be familiar with the events that happened at Freddy's. Quote from the story, "It took a few seconds for the name Fazbear to ring a bell, but then Steve remembered the kids' pizza places that once had been wildly popular, but had suffered a downfall after a variety of criminal allegations. There had been talk of murders, though Steve didn't remember how many. There was weirder stuff too, stories about paranormal events and that kind of nonsense. Steve doesn't actually know the stories and events that took place. He doesn't remember how many kids died. He doesn't believe in paranormal activity. He is an unreliable narrator, which therefore puts everything in those first 4 games into question. He knew rumors of paranormal activity, so he created possessed animatronics. He knew about murders, so he put in minigames depicting kids being murdered. As for the facts though, he cannot be trusted. And the story tries to make it crystal clear that FNAF 4 was largely of his own creation, born out of the torture that Fazbear was subjecting him to. As his hallucinations get more nightmarish, Steve starts seeing monsters literally appear out of the walls. One of them is described as follows, quote, "It was the head of something. It was small but bulbous and vain, its large eyes almond-shaped with cat-like pupils. It lunged forward from the hole in the wall and parted its jaws to reveal a mouthful of sharp-looking teeth. Its pointed tongue darted out like a snake's when it sniffed the air." This moment isn't just to show us Steve's torture, it's to show us the influence that it has on the games that he's making. Look at the description. Does it remind you of anything? A character with cat-like eyes, a long pointed tongue, sharp teeth, who likes to pop out unexpectedly? It's Nightmare Foxy from FNAF
Yeah, he's the only one that would ever do that in the game.
4. Look at this picture from the teasers leading up into the game, especially the long pointed tongue. Who else pops out from the closet, from under the bed, from behind a TV in that game? Foxy. The book is spelling out for us why that game is so different, why it's no longer a game about Fazbear Pizzeria. The torture became so much that the story had shifted from being a Fazbear story to being a Steve story. 4 games, 1 story. It's the clue that Scott gave us a long time ago during a live stream after the release of FNAF 4. At first, I suspected the line was all about dream theory, that all of it was happening in the nightmares of a child, and I think that one was right. Then it shifted to the 4 games being about one family, the Aftons, as their kids grappled with the sins of their father, and I think that was also right. But now it's changed once again. It's now 4 games about one new story, Steve's story. The story of a game designer that was being gaslit by an evil robotics company.
Or a real life game designer that was getting so stressed out that he started having more nightmares as the times went on. He started having hallucinations in FNAF 3, then started having nightmares in FNAF 4. Obviously, he had nightmares about Bonnie in FNAF 1, but my main point is that this is clearly shows a lot about what Scott was going through at the time, because you could always tell that something was up, because Scott would always release games like a month early or a few weeks early, and it was always weird that he had it done really quickly, and a lot of people did rush him, wanted it done, wanted it to come. And exactly what the story is saying is that he was pushed into this. He was constantly made to do this. He wasn't given breaks. He wasn't do anything. And it probably that's why he said the final chapter, because he wanted to end there, but he couldn't. It was too big. He couldn't stop there. That's probably what was it, if I had to guess, and that was still locked in the chest.
I gotta hand it to Scott. It's actually impressive how many times he's been able to make that single phrase describe the same set of 4 games. It also means that Scott gets to have his cake and eat it too. He gets to make those first 4 games the equivalent of Dream Theory without it actually being a dream. Oh, was the puppet referred to as a he in FNAF 2? Steve didn't know. Were there 5 victims? 10? 15 in that first set of pizzerias? Don't know. Steve's just making his best guess. But most importantly of all, it means that anything that doesn't physically appear in or after Sister Location and beyond is suddenly cast into doubt. And when you think about it, that includes some major parts of the lore. For instance, we know that Michael Afton is in fact a security guard for Fazbear Entertainment at some point thanks to the security logbook. Plus, with Sister Location in FNAF 6, we know that he ends up getting scooped and dying in a fire. Sister Location also proves the existence of Elizabeth Afton and how she got scooped by Baby. But the third Afton kid, Crying Child, he's never been mentioned in any other game other than FNAF 4. I've made theories suggesting that he's the other spirit communicating with Cassidy in the survival logbook, but that's just speculation because I assume that he existed. In FNAF 6's Midnight Motorist, there's reason to believe that he's the one who broke out of the house, considering that Mike in the chair says he's had a hard night, but again, that is pretty weak evidence. Honestly, the closest we get to having physical evidence of his existence is in Security Breach's Post-it room, where there's a dinner scene made up of 5 staff bots that appear to be simulating the Afton family, and one of those 5 is missing its head, which we've assumed represents the Crying Child getting chomped. But all of that evidence only stands because the Crying Child was thought to exist thanks to the first 4 games. Maybe that's why we've never actually gotten a name for him, because he was never meant to exist in the first place, and so Scott purposefully hid the name in order.
Which would make sense if he is going through the route of that it's him in that scenario that is getting pressured to do stuff, being pressured to do this, do that, and he doesn't want to do it. Yes, he enjoyed it from time to time. You can see as the Grind Child had all the plushies. He loved the FNAF series. He wanted to do more, but he was so much pressured. It just drove him to go mad. And then the final chapter, it was supposed to be the end, but he had to go. He had to keep doing it.
Order to allow the 5th Afton child's identity to remain anonymous, ready for a big plot twist when it turns out that he has another child, maybe a daughter, maybe called Vanessa. It's speculative as all heck, I'm just throwing it out there as a consideration. Henry and Charlie are definitely in this universe. We see Charlie's death and possession of the puppet thanks to the minigames in FNAF 6, so that's all confirmed. But the missing children's incident where 5 kids were murdered at the FNAF 1 location? Unclear. It's likely that it happened, considering that in FNAF 6's Lorekeeper ending, we see 5 gravestones with one on a hill. The 5 missing children's incident victims plus Charlie, the 6 victims of William Afton. It's the same thing with Princess Quest. To move forward in the Princess Quest minigame, you have to light 6 gravestones. So it seems like those 5 murders happened, but then what about the extra 5 dead bodies that we see appearing throughout the FNAF 2 pizzeria? What about hearing that the pizzeria is getting closed down in the tapes? Even less clear. FNAF VR's main ending proves that William Afton is still the main killer in this universe and that he definitely stuffed kids into the animatronics. However, whether those kids go on to possess the animatronics is up for debate. Without the first 4 games being officially canon, we don't really have any evidence for their possession. But perhaps the biggest ripple effect of them all, this new understanding of the canonicity heavily suggests that Golden Freddy may never have existed. That's right, my favorite clickbait yellow boy may not actually be a thing in this franchise at all. Consider this, Golden Freddy, while seemingly this super important piece of the lore to the franchise, hasn't shown up in a major way in any recent titles. He's only ever shown up in titles with questionable canonicity, like FNAF World, which is definitely not canon, Custom Night, which is Afton's personal hell, and FNAF AR, which isn't really canon. And if you think it is, then both Shamrock Freddy and Chocolate Bonnie are canon, and I refuse to live in a world where that could possibly be true. But in the main games, nothing. In Sister Location, his name is used in a Custom Night challenge. In FNAF 6, completely absent. And in Security Breach, sure, there's a golden Glamrock Freddy that you can collect, but there's a golden toy of every character that you can collect. In fact, I think Security Breach was outright trying to tell us that Golden Freddy has never been a thing. Of the dozens of collectibles that you can find throughout the game, plushies, figurines, keychains, sweaters, 4 of them actually seemed important. 3 posters from Fredbear's Family Diner, and an even older one from Fredbear's Singin' Show. The Singin' Show is, I don't know man, it makes it look like the next game is gonna be a crossover with Bendy and the Ink Machine. But the Fredbear's Family Diner ones are the ones that I want to focus on now. Look at these things. One of them has the golden Bonnie with a purple bow tie, just like you'd expect. But the other 2 show us a brown bear with a black hat and a black bow tie. And you see, that is a huge detail. Up until this point, we've been under the impression that there were only 2 mascots at Fredbear's Family Diner, Golden Bonnie and Golden Freddy. In FNAF 3, we see a Golden Bonnie and Golden Freddy performing together on stage. Similarly, in FNAF 4, we see Golden Bonnie and Golden Freddy again. It was always those 2 together, with other characters like Foxy and Chica not showing up until later. So why then in Security Breach would they show us regular Freddy as the one on the Fredbear posters? Unless he is Fredbear. It's everything that we've been talking about today. Our evidence for Golden Freddy is all founded upon the original 4 FNAF titles, games made by a guy whose brain was slowly turning to mush. But when you actually stop and look for the physical evidence of who Fredbear was in the games that are still considered to be canon, all we get is a brown bear. Golden Freddy was never real. He never existed. I know, it seems wild, but it actually helps answer a lot of questions that we've had about Golden Freddy throughout this franchise. First off, his wildly inconsistent appearance. In both FNAF 1 and 2, he appears gold with a black hat and bow tie, but in the FNAF 2 minigame showing Charlie being killed outside Fredbear's Family Diner, the Freddy we play as is brown with a black hat, more similar to the Fredbear that we see in the posters for Security Breach. In the FNAF 3 minigame that apparently shows us Fredbear's Family Diner, he goes back to being gold with a black hat. But then in FNAF 4's minigame, he's shown to be gold with a purple hat and bow tie. His appearance has never remained consistent, which could make sense if these are games being made by a guy who's under extreme duress. If Golden Freddy isn't around, then who could have done the bite of 83? Well, it could be that that never happened. We've never seen a gravestone for Crying Child after all. If Golden Freddy doesn't exist, then where does Cassidy's soul reside? Well, again, we still don't have any proof that the original missing children actually possessed any animatronics. All their souls may have just moved on or been immediately converted into Remnant. Cassidy only really appears in Ultimate Custom Night, so either their spirit is attached to Afton's like Andrew's is in the Fazbear Fright series, or it's just William torturing himself over the memory of this one child that he murdered in cold blood. Long story short, I still haven't fully worked out the ramifications of all this, and I'd love your help working through it because this revelation about the first 4 games being games demands a whole new way of looking at the series. The ripple effects of this revelation are huge, and casts even more doubt into stuff that we thought that we knew about the games. I mean, with all the new books and games and revelations that we've had since the release of Security Breach, I've been meaning to do a state of the lore video for a while, just to make sure that we're all operating on the same page of what is true and what isn't true. Because at this point, it's hard for even me to keep track of what we've proved, what's only speculation, all of that. And after episodes like today, that sort of video feels more important than ever. So keep an eye out for that one in the next couple of weeks, which means that I'm back to researching FNAF from square one. And I thought we were done with the scary season. But hey, at least while I'm pulling my hair out.
Okay. I do agree highly of what he's saying. I've had this suspicion for a while now. But it makes perfect sense because I think it's also to show what Scott went through. I think that's why he also wrote the book. Again, is that Scott wanted to say these 4 games weren't truly what he wanted to do. He started off trying to make, that simple game. I can't remember the name of it, but it was with beavers or woodchucks or whatever they were called, and it's referenced in multiple games like Guild Ship and all that. But it shows how much someone does not want to do something that they literally put it in the lore of their game. He started out just trying to make children's games, and then people kept commenting that his creatures looked like animatronic nightmares. Then he made FNAF 1. Perfectly fine. Made sense. Everything was fine. FNAF 2 came around. The lore was different. It was in the past, and then we got all these new things. FNAF 3 rolls around, and it's 30 years after FNAF 1, which makes no sense. And then again, FNAF 4, it's back in time again, and it makes sense that none of this is actually like real, because the lore is complicated because it's supposed to be complicated. Scott is showing how much pressure can change a story and the person making it. I think that's what the motto of this is right here. That is how this is gonna go down. Yeah, Scott is trying to tell everyone that because of how much people have been pressuring him from FNAF 1 to 4, that everything just started going downhill. Clearly when we got around after Help Wanted, clearly he had to ask for help with other games because he had to keep going further. But he wanted to move on. He kept mentioning that constantly. He wanted to move on. He wanted to tell a new story without the pressure. I think he's going to do that now through the books a lot more, especially Tales from the Pizzaplex. I actually do need to get those and read those. Those are actually probably going to be really good. But I have some of the old Fazbear Fright books. I think I have like 1 through 8. Yes, I know there's more than 1 through 8, but that's all I could get at the moment. But we got to remember that game developers are people too, and we can't force them to keep making really good stuff. I'm gonna move my camera, my setup to over here. Okay, we just gotta remember that there's no point on just forcing people to make more and more games. Like it's like in the book, it was literally gaslighted and pushed to keep making games in the book. In real life, people kept pushing him to the point he wanted to just end it in FNAF 4. The reason he wanted to say the final chapter. He pushed through it and was able to start doing his actual story he wanted to do. To add titles that actually made more progress on what he wanted to do. Hence the different names of FNAF Sister Location, Pizzeria Simulator, Ultimate Custom Night, la-di-da-da, more. And then he tried to even go back to his roots. It failed miserably. To some people, I thought it was great, to be honest with you. But FNAF World was trying to go back to his old roots. And I think that's what's happening here, is that he's just saying, I was tortured during the first 4 games, completely tortured. I wasn't able to do the story I wanted to do. I couldn't do this. I couldn't do that. It kept getting harder to do it, and then it just happened, and he wanted to just stop it. Thank God he didn't stop it though, because it is a very good story now. And now that we know this, it actually makes this a lot easier to do, and completely figure out because now we can just look at parts that are true from the sys location and on, like Map has explained already. But we also got to remember that the people that are now making this, Steel Wool, that they are people and they are trying their best to make what Scott wanted. Just a reminder that there is a DLC coming out in 2023 for Security Breach. Just wanted to remind that. But seriously, this is like one big issue that is going on. Like, what's a good example? Fortnite. Fortnite, it has this big problem right now that people are just saying, oh, it's not as good as it used to be. It's not, oh, we don't get any of these cool things anymore. Because you're stressing the fuck out. Same thing that Scott had. Scott makes probably the books because it's easier and it's less work because people aren't complaining so much about it. I just realized how much a gap I have. Anyways, yes, they are. I think that what we're having to deal with is that it's showing William Afton in Help Wanted get controlled by Glitchtrap. I think that's what this whole thing's about, because the purple eyes is what keeps getting me in sister location, because it shows that those animatronics are taken over by a glitch, not possessed, a glitch, which would make so much more sense because you don't see possession as much in the main games. You see it definitely in like with Scrap Trap and Burn Trap, which also is a weird thing to mention. Those two are completely different. So is the original Spring Trap. Those things are weird. But I do also want to mention that fnaf's location and Pizzeria Simulator are all mentioned in the newest games, which is a bit confusing. Obviously, we know FNAF Pizzeria Simulator is canon, truly canon, because the place is there in sister location, and we know Scrap Trap is what the last Spring Trap was. I'm gonna explain why a lot of his stuff is gone, and he's rebuilt, and he's in a charging station. We know that this location has a big part in this because of the room in this location that's a secret room with, what do you know, the therapy tapes that he mentioned before that could be the sound delusion disc that was also mentioned, because that's when we first saw it ever in games wise, like truly saw it. And we know actually FNAF 4 did exist. Not fully what it was. It's not true. Like, for example, Fredbear. Fredbear I don't think was actually there. Bonnie, yes. Spring Bonnie, I mean. But I don't think Fredbear was there. But we know from Sis location that the FNAF 4 place was real. We don't know about the Crying Child, though. Yes, Golden Friend Fredbear was there in the game, but it makes no sense to have that character be real. Hold on. Hey, Freddy, I'm just going over stuff. Also, if you guys hear a little noise in the background, that's just my AC. Where was I? Freddy, I'll think about that in a minute. I gotta focus on what I was saying for a second. I have ADHD, so just lose it. I was talking about Spring Trap. I know that for sure. Right, Fredbear. Fredbear Family Diner, I think, did exist just from this location. If that was truly what it is, I think that's what's going to happen. Not happen. I think that is what happened. That FNAF 4 did exist, but not truly. I think probably, if I had to guess, the house existed. I think that's the layout that's also there. Fredbear's in the house did exist, but I don't think Crying Child was the true thing. I think that was just a saying from Scott's mind, saying, I'm having this trouble, I need help, and all that. Again, the whole thing about Scott being pushed to do these games, but to show that he enjoyed the community and stuff, he kept going. Reason why he wanted to get his full story out. I'll fix that. There we go. What else is there? I mentioned FNAF's dislocation. I mentioned. Oh right, Ultimate Custom Night. That one's the oddball out at the moment. That's the only one where we have Fredbear and Golden Freddy. I'm thinking, which is, so here's the weird thing: Scrap Trap and Spring Trap are both in that game, which is a bit of a problem. If I have the theory of that's also the indie game developer living his own hell, but it can't be if he didn't make the other games. If he didn't make Dislocation or Pizzeria Simulator. Those are the only ones I'm having trouble with. Is Ultimate Custom Night. That was the big problem right now. Am I missing one? Does it go Ultimate Custom Night then Help Wanted? Yeah, it does. And then obviously Help Wanted did a weird thing with 1, 2, and 3 being fully, completely redone in the game, but 4 was not truly done. Only part that was done over was the room. And the weird thing is it had Fredbear, some of the nightmares, and fudge, what was the last one? There was one more. Oh, Baby. Circus Baby. Probably saying, oh, these 4 things were not true at all. Plus the room, I think. And it's... If you're wondering, I have no script in front of me. I'm just doing this off the top of my head. It shows that probably those were also made up by partially the indie game developer if he did something with those. Because clearly at some point Freddy Fazbear's, my AC just turned off randomly. Freddy Fazbear's Entertainment decided to get a new team for it because hence the VR game and the AR game. I think that's what's going on here, but I'm not sure. I think that's what he still had involvement in it, and then they just booted him and said, "Oh, it's all his fault. He did this all." I think that's pretty much the story right there. Obviously, some stuff still like exists in it. In Dislocation and Pizzeria Simulator and Ultimate Custom Night. Something's still off about Ultimate Custom Night, but I'm not sure. We know for a fact that the Pizzeria Simulator place burned down because we saw it in Dislocation. But we don't know if those animatronics are real. For example, we don't see Circus Baby anywhere. Nothing to trace of her. We do see Molten Freddy, but the weird thing is, it's not the normal mask. It's not what we saw in the first game. It's the fuck it. Let me actually bring this up. Hold on. The blob fnaf. Okay, images. As you can see, this is definitely not the Molten Freddy that we saw in the original game. And that's what I'm thinking is going on here, is that I think the animatronics weren't true in those games. I think the location was true. And I think the new team was taken over then. But the problem with this is there's a lot of continuity error. Because if the FNAF place, Pizzeria Simulator existed, then where are the other animatronics? Even Scrap Trap doesn't look even close to what he used to, but it would make sense if the others were completely destroyed and that one was barely able to stay together. But it wouldn't explain all the, metal pieces, not the metal, the meat and everything on the inside of Burn Trap. It wouldn't make any sense. But I think I have a feeling that the characters that are stuck inside of this, because a lot of them, for some reason, represents FNAF 1, 2, and 3. Because if you think of Puppet and Mangle, they're in the third game as well. And actually, Chica is too. They're like very reminiscent of the first 3 games. Plus this location with Freddy, which was also in Help Wanted, which makes sense if he isn't supposed to exist. I think because we saw him with the illusion disc, like we actually picked up the illusion disc, he wasn't real. He actually wasn't him. And we can also tell by Sundrop and Moondrop. They're exactly the same. They sound exactly like him. Well, it is the same actor, but we won't go there. Scott loves doing the same actors, by the way, for like the same continuity. Like, for example, Baby, same exact actor. It is a bit weird. I think she plays Vanessa, actually, which would be a little bit strange, but we won't go there. And if Baby, because Baby is also in this, she's also in the Blob, which would also kind of screw things over, because remember, Mangle is in FNAF 2 and it makes sense to not be real because the FNAF 2 game did not exist. I mean, like story wise, it was just a figment of imagination with some truth, well, accidental truths, I'm going to call it, into it. Puppet, same thing. Because Puppet is, if you think about it, Charlotte, but if we look at it as remnant instead of possession, it would make more sense. Because she shows up again in Pizzeria Simulator, which was real. Most of it was. I want to just explain that most of it was real. She was inside Lefty. We could see it from secret images and all that. I do also want to mention that the Chica inside this, actually, never mind. It doesn't look like what I thought it was going to look like. I'm actually gonna pick. I'm gonna pick up a picture really quick. Scrap Trap FNAF images. So you can see here that that he barely even has a jaw at this point. He has no arm. Oh, excuse me. as you can see here, actually, hold on. Can I actually get a good picture of his other arm? Thank you. You can see here, he has a full, he has his tendons and everything here. If that wasn't the case, this would be totally canon. This would be the exact same thing. But we can see the bone stops here, and the muscle, not the muscle, tendons and stuff like that just stops here. It doesn't go any further or anything like that. But you can see here, it's gone all the way down the hand of the new exoskeleton. I don't know if that was like on purpose, or I don't know what the thing is about it. No, that doesn't make sense. I am gonna see one thing. Hold on. Let's see spring traps. So it wouldn't make sense if Springtrap's original design, for example, the feet don't match up at all, because actually none of their feet do, because he has stuff coming through his feet. He doesn't at all. This foot is very reminiscent of the original foot. Yeah, and this doesn't have ring. Well, the rings are, I think, new. But I do get more of this than this from this original. I do want to say that the ear is a lot more equal to this one. But you gotta remember, this probably got like fully redone and everything because of the burn and everything. But center would make sense still. Just trying to think here. Wait a minute, hold on. That's interesting. Springtrap, the original one, I think only had metal in his hands. But as you can see here, this is all bone. That's bone. That's not metal, that's bone. Which makes sense with these. This, and if it would be a full new arm here. Okay, yep, this is actually the Scrap Trap. I'm confident now that this is actually probably Scrap Trap with some other design qualities on him. Because now that I'm looking at it, this hand right here has no bones on it. And if you think about it, it would actually make sense for no hand here to have bone and have bone on this hand. This would make so much more sense. Let me look something up really quick. Burn trap fight cut scene.
Me.
And I think a good thing that they actually did here, and MapHat even noticed this. They always, with the when they're trying to do something, they always show the left hand. For some reason, it's always been the left hand, and I think I know the reason. It has to be because it is Scrap Trap. This has to be Scrap Trap. There's no way it's not. I am so close to the mic right now. I need to back up. There is no way that it is not Scrap Trap now. Yes, extremely damaged, like really bad condition. But it makes sense why there's still bone on the right hand, but not on the left. Obviously, a lot of things had to be replaced. And why there would be so much more not intestines, body parts still here, and why the jaw would be removed. Yeah, here's the jaw right there. By the way, I also want to mention that even Scott said before that all 3 games were guessed correctly. The story plot and everything. And then the 4th game was completely wrong, which would make sense for the theory that we have now, that all the 4 games are not real and the 4th one was just someone's mind going, which would make sense. But yeah, that's pretty much where we are right now. Alright, someone made a custom one. Hold on. Yeah, I think that's all I'm gonna go on about today. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and